My name is Sarah Michelle Rodriguez, and I'm 32 years old. I should have been the happiest woman alive on September 15th, 2024, but instead, I was spitting blood onto my wedding dress while 200 guests stared in horrified silence. The punch came out of nowhere. 1 second I was laughing with my bridesmaids near the cake table, still glowing from the most perfect ceremony I could have imagined. The next second, my brother Ryan's fist connected with my jaw so hard that stars exploded behind my eyes. The impact sent me stumbling backward, my ivory lace dress, the one I'd saved for 3 years to buy, now splattered with crimson droplets. The entire reception hall went dead quiet. Not even the soft jazz music could mask the collective gasp of our family and friends. My jaw throbbed, and I could taste copper in my mouth as I pressed my hand to my face, feeling the tender swelling already beginning. "You selfish bitch!" Ryan screamed, his face twisted with rage I'd never seen before. "You ruined everything. Everything was supposed to be about me today." I stood there, dizzy and confused, my wedding veil askew. What was he talking about? This was my wedding day. My moment. The day I dreamed about since I was a little girl playing dress-up in mom's old curtains. That's when my husband stepped forward. Captain Michael Torres, United States Marine Corps, fighter pilot, the man I'd fallen in love with not just for his gentle heart but for his unshakable sense of justice. He'd been talking to his commanding officer near the bar when Ryan attacked me, but now he was moving with that calm, controlled precision that made him so good at his job. "Ryan," Michael said, his voice eerily calm as he positioned himself between my brother and me. His dress blues were immaculate, his posture straight as a rod. "You just assaulted a United States Marine Corps officer's wife. At her wedding. In front of 200 witnesses." Ryan's face went white. The rage drained from his expression, replaced by something that looked like dawning horror. "Turn around and face the wall," Michael continued, his tone never rising above conversational level. "Hands behind your back." "Michael, wait," Ryan started, but my husband cut him off. "Now." The authority in that single word was absolute. Ryan, who'd been a weekend warrior in the National Guard for 6 years, knew that tone. Everyone in the room seemed to understand that something irreversible was happening. My brother slowly turned around, his hands shaking as he placed them behind his back. Michael produced zip-tie restraints from somewhere, probably his emergency kit. The man was always prepared, and secured Ryan's wrists with practiced efficiency. "Sarah, are you okay?" Michael asked me gently, though his eyes never left my brother. I nodded, though my jaw was screaming and I could feel my left eye beginning to swell. "I think so." Michael pulled out his phone and dialed. "Base security? This is Captain Torres. I need MPs dispatched to the Riverside Country Club immediately. I have a civilian in custody for assault on a military family member." He rattled off the address with military precision. The room erupted in whispers and shocked conversations. I could see my mother across the room, her hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 5 minutes. But here's what nobody understood yet, what I didn't even understand myself in that moment. This wasn't just about Ryan having too much to drink, or wedding stress, or sibling rivalry gone wrong. This was about a secret that had been eating away at our family for months. A secret that would explain why my own brother, the person who'd walked me down the aisle since Dad's back surgery, would destroy the most important day of my life. If you've ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted most, you know that sinking feeling when your whole world shifts. But stick around, because what I discovered about my brother's real motives will shock you even more than that punch did. Growing up, Ryan was everything I wasn't. 3 years older, naturally athletic, charming in that effortless way that made teachers love him and girls follow him around like lovesick puppies. I was the quiet one, the bookworm, the daughter who got good grades but never quite shone bright enough to compete with my brother's natural charisma. Our house in suburban Phoenix was like a shrine to Ryan's achievements. Football trophies lined the mantelpiece, certificates covered the refrigerator, and every conversation somehow circled back to whatever amazing thing Ryan had done that week. I learned early that the best way to get attention was to celebrate his victories louder than anyone else. "Sarah's such a good sister," Mom would say, beaming as I cheered from the bleachers at Ryan's games. "She's Ryan's biggest fan." What she didn't see was how I'd go to my room afterward and cry into my pillow, wondering why nothing I did ever seemed good enough for that kind of praise. When I made honor roll, it got a nod and maybe a dinner at Applebee's. When Ryan threw a touchdown pass, it was calls to grandparents and Facebook posts with crying happy emojis. The dynamic got worse as we got older. In high school, I tutored him through chemistry and calculus while he dated cheerleaders and got recruited by college scouts. I was the one who wrote his English essays, not that anyone asked me to, but Ryan would get this panicked look before big assignments, and I couldn't stand watching him struggle. "You're so much smarter than me, Sarah," he'd say with that boyish grin. "You don't mind helping your big brother out, right?" I minded. God, I minded so much it felt like swallowing glass. But saying no to Ryan was like disappointing the whole family at once. He was our shining star, and I was just the supporting cast member who made sure he kept sparkling. College was supposed to be my escape. I got a full academic scholarship to Arizona State, something that should have been front-page news in the Rodriguez Family Chronicle. Instead, the celebration lasted about 5 minutes before the conversation turned to Ryan's acceptance to the Air Force Academy. "Can you believe it?" Dad said, practically glowing with pride. "My son, a future Air Force officer. Sarah, you must be so proud of your brother." "Always so proud of my brother. Never just proud of me." I threw myself into my studies, majoring in aerospace engineering partly because I loved it and partly because I wanted to prove I was just as capable as the golden child. I graduated summa cum laude, landed a job at Boeing, and started building a life that had nothing to do with living in Ryan's shadow. That's where I met Michael at an aviation conference in San Diego. He was giving a presentation on fighter jet navigation systems, and I was in the audience taking notes for a project I was working on. During the break, I approached him with a technical question, and we ended up talking for 2 hours about flight dynamics and propulsion systems. Most guys' eyes glazed over when I started talking about thrust-to-weight ratios. Michael leaned in closer. "You want to grab dinner?" he asked as the conference was wrapping up. I'd love to continue this conversation without PowerPoint slides. That dinner turned into a weekend. The weekend turned into months of long-distance calls and cross-country flights. A year later, he proposed on the beach in San Diego where we had our first real conversation. For the first time in my life, I was the center of someone's universe. Michael didn't see me as Ryan's little sister or the family backup plan. He saw me as Sarah, brilliant, funny, beautiful Sarah who could explain aerodynamics and make him laugh until his sides hurt. When I called my parents to share the engagement news, Mom's first question wasn't about the ring or the proposal. "What does Ryan think?" she asked. "He'll want to give his blessing, you know. As the man of the family." The man of the family. Ryan was 25 and still living in their basement, working part-time at a sporting goods store while he figured things out after washing out of the Air Force Academy's pilot program. But he was still the man of the family. I should have seen the warning signs during the wedding planning. Ryan inserted himself into every decision, from the venue to the music to the guest list. He had opinions about my dress, my flowers, my choice of bridesmaids. When I politely suggested that maybe these were decisions for Michael and me to make, Mom would give me that disappointed look. "Sarah, honey, Ryan just wants to be involved. He loves you. He wants your day to be perfect." But there was something else happening that I didn't understand until much later. Something that had been building for months, festering like an infected wound that nobody wanted to acknowledge. 3 days before the wedding, I was at my parents' house dropping off programs when I overheard Ryan on the phone in the kitchen. "No, Mom, you don't understand," he was saying, his voice tight with frustration. "This changes everything. Sarah can't just..." He saw me in the doorway and went quiet, his face flushing red. "Can't just what?" I asked. "Nothing," he said quickly. "Just wedding stress. You know how it is." But I could see something in his eyes that I'd never seen before when he looked at me. Something that looked almost like hatred. Now, standing in that reception hall with blood on my dress and my brother in zip-tie restraints, I was about to learn exactly what he'd been talking about. The truth about Ryan's rage was worse than any punch to the face. It was about to shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. The MPs arrived within 20 minutes, their serious faces and pressed uniforms cutting through the shocked chatter of wedding guests like a knife through silk. I watched from the bridal suite as they loaded Ryan into the back of their vehicle, his head hanging in shame as our relatives whispered and pointed. Michael found me there an hour later, still in my blood-stained dress, holding a bag of ice to my swollen jaw. "The medic says it's not broken," he said gently, sitting beside me on the velvet settee. "But you should see a doctor tomorrow just to be sure." I nodded, though talking still hurt. "What happens to Ryan now?" "He'll be processed, probably spend the night in custody. There'll be charges filed, assault, disrupting a military function." "Sarah." He took my hand. "His National Guard career is over. You know that, right?" I did know. "In the military, you didn't get second chances for something like this." Ryan had thrown away 6 years of service, his benefits, his future, all to punch his sister at her wedding. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Michael, I don't understand why he did this." That's when Mom appeared in the doorway, her makeup streaked with tears, Dad hovering behind her like a lost soul. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk," Mom said. "There's something we should have told you sooner." The ice pack slipped from my numb fingers as they sat down across from us. Whatever they were about to say, I could tell it was going to hurt worse than Ryan's punch. "Your grandmother's will," Dad started, then stopped, running his hands through his gray hair. "When Abuela passed last year, she left instructions that weren't supposed to be opened until your wedding day," Mom finished. "She wanted it to be a surprise. A wedding gift." My grandmother, Elena Rodriguez, had been the matriarch of our family. She'd immigrated from Mexico with nothing but determination and a fierce love for her children. Over 40 years, she built a small empire, a successful catering business, 3 rental properties, and a nest egg worth nearly $2 million. When she died, I'd assumed everything would go to my parents, maybe with small portions for Ryan and me. That's how these things usually worked. "Sarah," Mom said, her voice breaking, "she left everything to you." The words hit me like another punch, but this time to the chest instead of the face. "What do you mean, everything?" "The business, the properties, the savings accounts, all of it." Dad's voice was hollow. "She said in her letter that you were the only one who never asked her for money, never expected anything from her. You visited her every week, helped with her grocery shopping, read to her when her eyes got bad. I had done those things, but not for money. I'd done them because I loved her, because she was the one person in my family who saw me as more than just Ryan's little sister. Ryan found out 3 months ago, Mom continued. He was helping us go through her papers, and he saw the will. The pieces started falling into place like dominoes. Ryan's strange behavior during wedding planning. His angry phone call 3 days ago. The look of hatred in his eyes. He thought he was getting the inheritance, I said, understanding flooding through me like cold water. Dad nodded miserably. He'd been counting on it. He'd already put a down payment on a house, bought a new truck. He told people at work that he was about to come into some serious money. But why didn't anyone tell me? I asked, my voice rising despite the pain in my jaw. Why did I have to find out like this? We thought. Mom's hands twisted in her lap. We thought maybe if we waited until after the wedding, until you and Michael were settled, it would be easier. And Ryan begged us not to say anything. He said he needed time to adjust, to figure out his finances. Michael's arm tightened around my shoulders. So he's been stewing in resentment for 3 months, watching Sarah plan her wedding, knowing she was about to inherit everything he thought was his. It wasn't supposed to be his, I said, anger finally breaking through the shock. Abuela never promised him anything. But even as I said it, I understood. Ryan had grown up as the golden child, the one everyone expected great things from. In his mind, of course he would inherit the family fortune. Of course the successful business and valuable properties would go to him, the man, the firstborn, the one who was supposed to carry on the Rodriguez legacy. Instead, they'd gone to the quiet daughter who asked for nothing and expected less. There's more, Dad said quietly. Ryan's been telling people, extended family, some of our neighbors, that there was a mistake. That you manipulated Abuela somehow, convinced her to change the will. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. He's been lying about me? To anyone who would listen, Mom admitted. He said you probably forged the documents or something. He's been trying to get family members to side with him, to help him contest the will. I thought about my cousins, my aunts and uncles, people I'd grown up loving and respecting. How many of them now believed I was some kind of scheming manipulator who'd taken advantage of an elderly woman? That's why he hit you today, Michael said, his voice deadly calm. The will was supposed to be read after the ceremony. This was his last chance to stop it, to create enough drama that maybe the whole thing would fall apart. He thought if he could make you look unstable, or if the family was in chaos, maybe he could still fight the inheritance, Dad added. I think he snapped when he realized the ceremony had gone perfectly, that you were married and happy and about to get everything he wanted. The cruelest part was that I would have shared it with him. If Ryan had come to me like a brother instead of plotting like an enemy, I would have made sure he was taken care of. The business could have supported both of us. The properties could have been divided. Instead, he'd chosen to see me as an obstacle to be destroyed rather than a sister to be loved. Where does this leave us? I asked, looking at my parents' tear-stained faces. Neither of them could meet my eyes. I was about to discover that Ryan's public attack on me was just the beginning. The real battle for my family's soul was still to come. The next morning, Michael and I sat in the JAG officers' conference room at Luke Air Force Base while the legal proceedings began. My jaw was purple and swollen, making me look like I'd gone 10 rounds with a heavyweight boxer instead of dancing at my wedding reception. Mrs. Torres, the JAG officer, Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, said formally, your brother is looking at several serious charges. Assault and battery, disruption of a military function, and because this happened on federal property, the country club has military contracts. We're also looking at federal charges. Michael squeezed my hand under the table. What kind of sentence are we talking about? Realistically? 6 months to 2 years, depending on his plea. Plus a federal record that will follow him for life. I should have felt satisfied. Justice was being served. Ryan had made his choice when he decided to attack me in front of 200 witnesses. But all I felt was hollow and sad. That afternoon, we drove to my parents' house to collect some belongings I'd left there during wedding preparations. The neighborhood looked the same as always, neat lawns, minivans and driveways, kids riding bikes, but everything felt different now. Mom met us at the door, her eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. "How's your jaw, Mija?" she asked, reaching toward my face. I stepped back instinctively. "It's fine." The hurt that flashed across her face made me feel guilty, but I wasn't ready to pretend everything was normal. "Not yet." "Sarah, we need to talk about Ryan," Dad said from his recliner, where he'd been watching the news with the volume too loud. "He's asking for bail money." "Absolutely not," Michael said before I could respond. "He assaulted my wife. He can sit in jail and think about what he did." "He's family," Mom protested weakly. "Family doesn't punch you at your wedding," I replied, my voice sharper than I'd intended. "Mom, he's been lying about me for months. He told people I manipulated Abuela, that I'm some kind of criminal. He tried to destroy my reputation to get money that was never his in the first place." "But he's in trouble now," she said, tears starting again. "His career is over, his finances are ruined, and now he might go to prison." "Haven't we punished him enough?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Have we punished him enough for attacking his sister on the happiest day of her life? Have we punished him enough for trying to steal an inheritance through lies and manipulation? "Mom," I said carefully, "I need you to hear me. Really hear me." Ryan made choices. He chose to believe he deserved Abuela's money more than I did. He chose to lie about me to our family. He chose to attack me instead of talking to me. Every single consequence he's facing is the result of his choices. "But you could drop the charges," Dad suggested hopefully. "You could ask Michael to talk to his commander." Michael's laugh was bitter. "Sir, with respect, that's not how the military works. Ryan assaulted an officer's wife at a military function. Even if Sarah wanted to drop the charges, which she shouldn't, the Corps is going to prosecute this to the full extent." That evening, we were back in our hotel room when my phone rang. It was my cousin Elena, Abuela's namesake, calling from Los Angeles. "Sarah, I just heard what happened at your wedding," she said, her voice tight with anger. "I can't believe Ryan did that to you." "You heard?" "Everyone's heard. Social media, you know? Someone posted a video of the whole thing." "But Sarah, there's something else you need to know. Ryan's been calling family members, telling them you're trying to ruin him out of spite. He's saying you're using your military connections to get revenge. Even from jail, he was still lying about me." "Elena, I need to ask you something," I said. "Did you believe him? When he said I manipulated Abuela?" There was a long pause. "Honestly? At first, maybe a little. It was hard to understand why she'd leave everything to you instead of splitting it between you and Ryan. But then I remembered how you were with her. You were the only one who visited without wanting something. The only one who helped her with the little things that mattered to her. And Ryan? Ryan would show up when he needed money or wanted her to co-sign for something. He loved her, but it was conditional, you know? His love came with price tags attached. After we hung up, I sat on the hotel bed thinking about the past 24 hours. About family and love and what we owe each other. I want to see him, I told Michael. Sarah, no. That's a terrible idea. I need to. I need to understand if there's anything left of the brother I grew up with. The next morning, we drove to the county jail. Ryan looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing orange scrubs that made his skin look gray. When he saw me through the reinforced glass, his face crumpled. Sarah, I'm so sorry, he said into the phone, his voice breaking. I don't know what happened to me. I lost it. You lost it 3 months ago when you found out about the will, I replied calmly. Everything since then has been a choice. But I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just so angry and scared, and... Ryan, stop. I held up my hand. I'm not here for your excuses. I'm here because I need you to understand something. I would have shared it with you. If you'd come to me as my brother instead of going behind my back, lying about me, trying to turn our family against me, I would have made sure you were okay. His face went white. You would have? Of course I would have. But you chose to see me as an enemy instead of your sister. You chose to believe that I was capable of manipulating a dying woman. You chose to attack me at my wedding instead of talking to me. Can you forgive me? He whispered. I looked at this man who'd shared my childhood, who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my first science fair project. Who'd also spent months trying to destroy my reputation and had ended our relationship with violence. I can forgive you, I said finally. But I can't trust you. And I can't have you in my life until you take responsibility for what you've done, all of it, not just the punch, and prove that you've changed. Sarah, please. I love you, Ryan. But love isn't enough anymore. You need to fix yourself before we can fix us. 6 months later, Ryan pled guilty to assault and was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. He lost his National Guard position, his security clearance, and most of his friends. The house he'd put a down payment on was foreclosed, and his truck was repossessed. I used part of Abuela's inheritance to start a scholarship fund in her name for first-generation college students studying engineering. I kept the catering business running and turned the rental properties into affordable housing for military families. Michael and I bought a house near the base where we could build our own family traditions. Some relatives still whisper about the inheritance, about whether I deserved it or manipulated Abuela somehow. I've learned to let them whisper. The people who truly know me understand the truth, and their opinions are the only ones that matter. Ryan writes me letters from prison sometimes. They're full of apologies and promises to do better. Maybe someday, when he's proven that he's changed, we'll try to rebuild our relationship. But it will be on new terms, with clear boundaries and honest communication. Michael was right that day at our wedding. Actions have consequences, especially when you're dealing with people who've sworn to protect and serve. But the deeper lesson took me longer to learn. You can't control how people treat you, but you can control how much access they have to your life. My wedding day will never be the memory I planned to have. When I look at our photos, I'll always see the ones where my jaw is swollen and my eye is black. But I'll also see the moment my husband stood up for me without hesitation, the moment I learned that real love looks like protection and justice, not just pretty words and promises. Some betrayals teach you who people really are. Others teach you who you really are. Ryan's attack taught me both. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted most? Have you had to choose between forgiving family and protecting yourself? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest battles we fight are the ones within our own families. 2 years after my wedding disaster, I thought the worst was behind us. Ryan had served his time and was living in a halfway house in Tucson, working construction and supposedly attending anger management classes. Michael had been promoted to major, and we just found out I was pregnant with our first child, a daughter we planned to name Elena after my grandmother. Life felt like it was finally moving forward. Then my phone rang at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. "Sarah, you need to get to the hospital." Mom's voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. "It's your father. He's had a heart attack." The drive to Phoenix felt endless, even with Michael pushing his motorcycle as fast as the speed limit allowed. I kept thinking about Dad, how he'd aged 10 years in the months after Ryan's arrest, how the stress had carved deep lines around his eyes and stolen the easy laugh that had defined my childhood. We found Mom in the cardiac ICU waiting room, clutching a cup of cold coffee with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. "How is he?" I asked, sinking into the plastic chair beside her. "Surgery," she whispered. "Triple bypass. The doctor says, he says if we'd gotten him here an hour later." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. "Where's Ryan?" Michael asked, though I could tell from his tone that he already suspected the answer. "He's coming," Mom said quickly. I called the halfway house. "They're trying to reach him." 3 hours later, Dad was out of surgery and stable, but Ryan still hadn't shown up. I found myself pacing the hospital corridors, my 4-month pregnancy making me feel off balance in more ways than one. Maybe there was traffic, Mom kept saying. Or maybe they couldn't find him right away. But I knew better. Ryan was choosing not to come, just like he'd chosen not to return any of my letters over the past year, just like he'd chosen to miss every family gathering since his release. At 8 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Heard about Dad. Can't make it to hospital. Work situation. Tell him I hope he's okay." I stared at the message until the words blurred together. Work situation. Our father nearly died, and Ryan had a work situation. "What is it, Mija?" Mom asked, seeing my face. I showed her the text. She read it twice, then sank back into her chair like someone had cut her strings. "He's not coming," she said flatly. "Mom." "No, Sarah. Don't make excuses for him." I've been making excuses for 30 years, and look where it got us. Her voice was getting stronger, clearer. "Your brother chose construction work over his father's life." That afternoon, Dad woke up groggy but alive. The first thing he asked for wasn't water or pain medication. "Where's Ryan?" Mom and I exchanged glances. I'd never seen her look so tired, so defeated. "He couldn't make it, honey," she said gently. "Work obligations." Dad's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, hurt, understanding, and finally, something that looked like resignation. "Of course he couldn't," he said quietly. I should have expected that. The words hit me like a physical blow, not because they were angry, but because they were so utterly sad. This was Dad accepting that his golden child, the son he'd bragged about for 30 years, couldn't be bothered to visit him in the hospital. Over the next few days, as Dad recovered, I watched my parents' dynamic shift in ways I'd never seen before. Mom stopped making excuses for Ryan's absence. She stopped saying things like he's dealing with a lot right now or the halfway house probably has strict rules. Instead, she started talking about me, about my job, my marriage, my pregnancy. She asked about baby names and nursery colors. She wanted to know if Michael and I needed anything for the house. "I'm proud of you, Sarah," she said one evening as we sat beside Dad's hospital bed. He was sleeping, his chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of someone finally out of danger. "I don't think I've told you that enough over the years." The words were so unexpected that I nearly choked on my coffee. "You are? Look at what you've built," she continued, gesturing toward Michael, who was dozing in the corner chair still wearing his flight suit from an emergency call that morning. "A good marriage, a successful career, and now a baby on the way. You did all of that without asking us for help, without expecting us to fix your problems." "Mom." "Let me finish," she said firmly. "I spent so much time worrying about Ryan, trying to prop him up and smooth his path, that I forgot to appreciate the daughter who was doing everything right. You never needed us to succeed, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't have celebrated your successes." The apology I'd been waiting for my entire life was finally here, but it came wrapped in so much sadness that I could barely enjoy it. Dad woke up while we were talking and caught the tail end of Mom's words. "Your mother's right," he said, his voice still hoarse from the breathing tube. "We failed you, Sarah. Not by loving Ryan too much, but by assuming you didn't need our love as much as he did." "I always needed it," I admitted, tears starting to flow. "I just got good at pretending I didn't." "We know," Mom said. "We see that now." 2 weeks later, Dad was home and recovering well. The doctor said the surgery had been successful, but he'd need to make major lifestyle changes: diet, exercise, stress management. Mom had transformed into a cardiac nutrition expert overnight, throwing out all the processed foods and researching heart-healthy recipes. That's when Ryan finally showed up. I was visiting on a Saturday afternoon, helping Dad with some physical therapy exercises, when I heard the front door open. "Hello? Anyone home?" My brother's voice sent a chill down my spine. He looked different, thinner, more weathered, with new tattoos covering his arms and a hardness in his eyes that hadn't been there before prison. "Ryan," Dad said from his recliner, his voice carefully neutral. "You came." "Yeah, well, Mom said you were feeling better." Ryan glanced around the living room, taking in the medical equipment and prescription bottles. "Looks like you're doing okay." There was something in his tone, a dismissiveness that made my stomach clench. He wasn't here to check on Dad's health or offer support. He was here for something else. "How's the construction work going?" Mom asked, clearly trying to fill the awkward silence. "It's fine. Look, I can't stay long, but I wanted to talk to you about something." Ryan sat down across from our parents, his posture tense. "I've been thinking about Abuela's inheritance situation." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Ryan," I said warningly. "No, Sarah, hear me out." He turned to face me, and I saw that old familiar anger flickering behind his eyes. "I've had a lot of time to think about this, and I've talked to some people. Legal people." Michael straightened in his chair, his protective instincts kicking in. "What kind of legal people?" Dad asked quietly. "The kind who think there might have been some irregularities in how the will was handled," Ryan said. The kind who think a vulnerable elderly woman might have been influenced by someone who had regular access to her. The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. After everything we'd been through, after his conviction and imprisonment, Ryan was still trying to paint me as a manipulator who'd taken advantage of our grandmother. "Get out," Dad said, his voice deadly quiet. Ryan blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "What?" I said, "Get out of my house." Dad was struggling to stand up from his recliner, his face flushed with an anger I'd rarely seen from him. "Right now." "Dad, calm down," Mom said quickly, worried about his heart. "No, Maria, I will not calm down." Dad was on his feet now, pointing toward the door. "I nearly died 2 weeks ago, and this is the first time he bothers to show up. Not to see if I'm okay, not to help your mother, but to continue his vendetta against Sarah." "It's not a vendetta," Ryan protested. "It's about justice." "Justice?" Dad's laugh was bitter. "You want to talk about justice? Sarah visited your grandmother every week for 5 years. She helped with groceries, read to her, sat with her during doctor's appointments. You visited when you needed money." "That's not true." "It is true." Dad's voice was getting louder, and I could see Mom watching him nervously. "Sarah earned that inheritance through love and service. You think you deserved it because you're a man, because you're the oldest, because the world owes you something. Well, it doesn't." Ryan's face was turning red, his hands clenching into fists. For a moment, I thought he might take another swing at someone. "You chose this, Ryan," Dad continued. "You chose to lie about your sister. You chose to attack her at her wedding. You chose to miss my heart surgery for work. Every single consequence you're facing is because of choices you made. Dad, I'm done making excuses for you." Dad's voice was getting stronger, more certain. "I'm done pretending that your failures are anyone's fault but your own. I'm done watching you hurt people I love and then expecting us to comfort you when you face the consequences." Ryan stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Fine," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "I see how it is. Sarah's the perfect daughter and I'm the family screw-up. But this isn't over. I'm going to fight this will, and when I win, maybe you'll remember which kid stuck around to take care of you." "Stuck around?" Dad laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Ryan, you've been living 3 hours away and haven't called in 6 months. Sarah drives down from Phoenix every weekend to help your mother with my medications. She's the one who's been taking care of us." Ryan looked around the room, at Dad's medical equipment, at Mom's exhausted face, at me sitting quietly with my hand on my growing belly, and I could see the exact moment he realized he'd lost them for good. "Whatever," he said finally. "Enjoy your perfect little family." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard that one of Mom's ceramic angels fell off the shelf and shattered on the floor. In the silence that followed, Dad sank back into his recliner, his hands shaking. "Are you okay?" I asked, rushing to check his pulse. "I'm fine," he said, though his voice was tired. "Actually, I feel better than I have in years." Mom was sweeping up the broken angel, her movements careful and deliberate. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see it," she said without looking up. "I kept thinking that if I just loved him enough, supported him enough, he'd change. I thought being a good mother meant never giving up on your child. Being a good mother also means protecting the child who doesn't need protection," I said gently. "The one who never asked for anything but deserved everything." 3 months later, Ryan did try to contest the will. His lawyer, clearly someone working on contingency who'd been sold a bill of goods about a grieving grandson being cheated out of his inheritance, dropped the case within a week after seeing the documentation. Abuela had been meticulous. She'd kept records of every conversation, every decision, every reason behind her choice to leave me her estate. She'd even written letters to be opened after her death, explaining her reasoning to family members who might question her decision. Sarah was the daughter I never had, one letter read. She loved me not for what I could give her, but for who I was. That kind of love is rare, and it should be rewarded. Ryan's lawyer sent a formal letter withdrawing from the case and suggesting that his client seek therapy rather than legal recourse. I never heard from Ryan again after that day at our parents' house. Mom told me he'd moved to California, that he'd found work with a different construction company and was supposedly doing better. She didn't sound convinced. "Do you miss him?" Michael asked one evening as we painted the nursery, soft yellow walls with white clouds, because we wanted everything to be peaceful for our daughter. I thought about the question seriously. Did I miss the brother who'd taught me to ride a bike? Yes. Did I miss the man who'd attacked me at my wedding and tried to steal my inheritance through lies and manipulation? Not for a second. I miss who I thought he was, I said finally. But I don't think that person ever really existed. I think I spent 30 years loving a fantasy. That's not your fault, Michael said, dipping his brush in the paint. Children are supposed to love their siblings unconditionally. It's not your job to know better when you're growing up. But it is my job to know better now, I replied. It's my job to protect our daughter from people who would hurt her, even if those people are family. Our daughter, Elena Rosa Torres, was born on a sunny day in September, exactly 1 year after my disastrous wedding. She had Michael's dark eyes and my stubborn chin, and when she grabbed my finger with her tiny hand, I made her a promise. "You will never have to earn love by being perfect," I whispered to her. "You will never have to compete with anyone for your place in this family. And if anyone ever tries to hurt you, family or not, your parents will stand between you and them." Dad held her for the first time that afternoon, tears streaming down his face. "She looks like your grandmother," he said softly. "Elena would have loved her." Mom nodded, adjusting the baby's blanket. "She would have been so proud of the mother you've become, Mija." As I watched my parents with their granddaughter, really seeing her, celebrating her, loving her without conditions or comparisons, I realized something profound. The cycle was broken. Whatever patterns of favoritism and neglect had shaped my childhood, they would end with me. Elena would grow up knowing she was treasured not for what she achieved or how she compared to others, but simply for being herself. She would never have to wonder if she mattered less than a sibling, never have to choose between loyalty and self-protection. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is refusing to pass on the wounds we inherited from our own childhoods. What patterns from your own family are you determined to break? How do you protect the next generation from the mistakes of the past? Share your thoughts below, because sometimes the most important victory is the one that ensures our children never have to fight the same battles we did.